You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we show business owners and entrepreneurs how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus their life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll help you diversify into real estate by equipping you with the tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. Hey guys, welcome to episode 91 of the Reinvest Podcast. Excited to be here today. In the show notes, check us out, lv5capital.com. That is our website where if you want to know how to diversify into real estate investing because you want to reclaim your time, which we're going to be talking about today, go check that out. Schedule a call with us.
We're getting up there, episode 91.
Yeah, how long have we been doing this, Seth?
2 years ago, this past April. So it's been a while now. We've met a lot of people.
Is it too soon to say we're too big to fail?
Yeah, it is very too soon to say that.
You know what? We're going to believe it, though. We're going to believe it. Well, one of the awesome things about this show is we get to meet some awesome people in the real estate investing realm. And it's actually a smaller world than you think it is once you start, rubbing shoulders and shaking the bushes. So with us today is Gabriel Hamel, lives in Oregon. And Gabe, how you doing, man? Can I call you Gabe or is it Gabriel? Which one is it?
Gabe or Gabriel is fine by me.
Okay, what's your mom call you?
Yeah. What is my mom? She calls me Gabriel. She leaves out yeah, Gabriel. I don't know. Yeah, which it's not Gabriel or Gabe, and I guess she named me. So
yeah, she gets naming rights and she can say how she wants. So you're married. You have 2 kids. You're in Oregon.
Correct. Yeah.
You are glowing right now. So I think I read in your bio that you take your health seriously. Give us a little bit. Who are you? How'd you get into real estate investing? Why do you live in the Northwest? We won't hold that against you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, kind of my backstory, I grew up here, never thought I'd stay in Oregon, but it's a beautiful part of the country. And really, I was the kid in school that never really connected the dots of how, what the hell are they teaching me and how does that apply to the real world? So I was always daydreaming, looking out the window and scribbling on the table. And, as I got a little, that's like elementary school. As I got older, I'd actually question the teachers hey, I'm just curious, how is what you're teaching me? How would I apply this to the real world? And they never really had an answer. It was
they probably didn't like that.
they didn't like it, but I was genuinely curious, it was, they're like, well, you got to pay attention. And if you get good grades, then, you can go to college. And, I kind of kept questioning those things through high school, but I also watched a lot of adults, right? My parents, I had great parents, but they had low paying jobs. I saw a lot of adults that they spent most of their day working. They couldn't wait till the day was over. They couldn't wait till it was the weekend. They had, one vacation a year that they were excited about. And that just was never attractive to me. I wanted something more at a young age.
So I mean, but I know it sounds good to say that, but you were actually cognizant of that was not attractive to you. Because some people, absolutely, that's just the environment you were in, but it did not pass the sniff test.
Yeah, but I didn't know what else was out there. So at 12, I went and got a paper route from 12 to 16, started selling candy bars out of my locker in middle school, condoms out of my locker in high school. Kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit, but didn't really know what that meant. I was always attracted to business, and really the only thing that kept me in school, in high school, was the social aspect. And then high school wrestling was a big part of my life. And so outside of that, I didn't have a lot of interest in school, in the classroom. And I ended up joining the military my senior year. So I joined an infantry unit, Army National Guard. A buddy of mine from the wrestling team was like, hey, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, just like the commercial. And the recruiter, great recruiter, would pick us up in a Humvee, take us to lunch, take us to go shoot some rifles. And I was like, gosh, 1 week in a month, not bad. So I graduated high school in 2000, and around 2002, I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that book, I'm sure a lot of your listeners, it changed my life. Not so much that it's a how-to book, but it answered a lot of questions that I didn't realize I even had questions about. I was like, oh, there is another way. There's another way to do this aside from the status quo of go to school, go to more school, get a job, work forever until you're old. And so it was actually the first book I ever read in my life, cover to cover, word for word.
Wow. And seriously, that's kind of crazy.
Which is crazy. You can get all the way through high school without ever reading a book. Later years, I found out I had some dyslexia and stuff, which it makes sense. but it was the first book that excited me. It was the first thing that I wanted to learn, that I was excited about learning. I didn't think I liked education, but after reading that book, I was like, oh, this is actually something I'm interested in. And this actually makes sense to me. And I was just dead set in my mind, like I would become financially free and real estate would be my path.
So let me ask you this question. I mean, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a very fundamental book for a lot of people. Have you done any research, or do you know, like, was that idea or concept out there in other literature, but this was just the one that kind of like brought it mainstream? Or did Robert Kiyosaki really bring something new that was just revolutionary?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think it was necessarily new. I mean, people have been buying, holding cash flow real estate for forever, right? But I think it just broke it down in the most simplest terms. Like, he wrote it at like a third grade level. That's what I needed. It was very simple. Like assets, it puts money in your pocket. Liabilities, take money out of your pocket. Right. I'm like, oh shit, most people are out there like financing all these liabilities. Like, why not go buy assets? It just made not just like financial sense, just like logical sense. I'm like, most people are working for the dollar. Yeah. And for me, what clicked, it really differentiated the difference of making money and building wealth. And so to me, it was just, yes, concepts that have been around and implemented for many, hundreds of years, but it broke it down in a very simple way to go, this makes sense. And this is what I'm going to go do.
Well, so like what's interesting with social media and kind of the last decade with technology and the advance, just the lightning speed at which technology has advanced, things have been democratized. And that's a term you're hearing people use when something that's private, secret, kind of unknown gets brought and made accessible to the common person. Airbnb, Uber, all these different things, Chat GPT. It's bringing information and democratizing it. In some ways, he kind of democratized real estate investing and building wealth to the common man because he was able to explain it. It was published, not on social media, but through print copies. And it just gave a paradigm for people that said, that makes sense to me. And, wealthy people were already doing this, but really the American dream is built off of investing in liabilities, right? Because somebody benefits from that. So you were sold on real estate. That was the first book that you read cover to cover. What did it actually look like to actually put this in action?
Well, yeah, it was kind of an interesting time. So I read that book like late 2002. And then in 2003, I get a phone call that I'm being deployed. And 5 days later, I'm gone.
No way.
Now, I'm super ignorant. Where were you deployed to? Was that Desert Storm?
I was deployed to Iraq. So I was 2003, 2004 deployed in Iraq. So spent about a year over there between Kuwait and Iraq.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So up until that point, from like graduating high school in 2000 until 2002, I just kind of jumped around odd and end jobs, different things. So yeah, I read that book. I'm living in my friend's attic at the time for $100 a month. Right.
Nice.
So, yeah. Living there for $100 a month. I read this book and I'm just like hyped up. Like I'm going to be financially free. I'm going to buy all this real estate. And I get deployed. I get a call on a Friday. And by Wednesday we're gone. And, really on the deployment, it's like my goal was, all right, I'm going to come back alive. I'm going to come back not too messed up, and I'm going to come back and buy a ton of real estate. And, I'm excited about this stuff. And after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, reading some of the other books in the series, and I'm telling all my friends overseas, like, I'm going to come back. I'm building this real estate empire. I'm definitely not going to college, not going to get a normal job. And they're like, man, you're an idiot. You're living in a friend's attic for $100 a month. You have no college education. Like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, I don't know how, but people do it and I'm going to do it. And so, I just talked it a lot that year. I believed it. Like I believed that I was going to come back and do that. I come back from overseas in 2004. And by 2005, I bought my first house. Wow. And it was kind of an interesting time because 2004, 2005, 6, 7, all during the subprime. And so I come back and I'm looking at properties, and in 2005, with no money and no job and really no down payment either, I was approved for a property, single family home, 100% financing.
They're just giving them away
and just giving away. And I bought smart. I was paying attention. I bought in an area and bought below what the neighborhood was selling properties for.
Was it a single family house?
It was a single family house. Yeah. I rented out 2 of the rooms before I ever heard of the term house hacking. It just made good financial sense to rent out 2 of the bedrooms and live for less than I could anywhere else. And And that was my first property. And I felt pretty good about that at the time. I went back to the bank in 06, did it again, and back in 07 and did it a third time. And I'm like, this is just fucking easy. Like, this is easy, like easier than the books. I'm just going to go to the bank once a year, every year, and buy a house with no money
10 years,
down.
10 properties. Yeah.
Yeah. 10 years, 10 properties, 20 years, 20 properties. Like, why don't more people do this? I'd also opened up a small nutrition store in 06. And so by 2008, my first kid's born. I shut my nutrition store down because it wasn't making money. And I was like, well, I guess I'll buy another property. So I go back to the bank in 2008 and they said, you don't qualify. And
wow, yeah, what changed?
I was like, what changed? What do you mean I don't qualify? I've bought these last 3 homes. They've cash flowed. I've never missed a payment, never been late. And they're like, yeah, you need a job, a down payment. And I'm like, why would I need a job? I was like, why would I need a job or down payment?
Say those things again. I'm going to write them down. You said job.
Yeah, job, down payment. I needed income. Yeah, I said, well, I never needed that before. What's changed? And they said, well, a lot's changed and you'll probably never see lending like this again. You don't qualify. So yeah, I took some odd and end jobs again. I was anything from help wanted ads on Craigslist. And I eventually ended up in a minimum wage job working 30 hours a week in a high school special education class. About 3 months into that job, I'm like, this is not my dream. This is not for me. Like, my heart goes out to those kids. My heart goes out to those that are, working in that industry, but this is not my dream. And I don't want to end up working forever in this low paying job. I got to get serious about real estate. And so I made a goal that year to replace my income. And I spent a year looking every day after work. I'd come home and I'd get online. I'd look on Craigslist. I was looking for seller financing deals since I didn't qualify for bank financing.
On Craigslist back in 2008. I mean, that's like the wild, wild west.
Oh yeah. Almost everything I bought, really everything I bought 2009 through 13 was all no money down seller finance deals.
Wow.
Almost all that I found on Craigslist or off market.
Wow. Now, explain the scenarios. What was the motivation then for those guys to sell seller financed?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the sellers, let me back up to that first deal because it was a big turning point too. So I was bringing home like less than $1,500 a month from the job, 30 hours a week, minimum wage.
Wow.
And so like my goal was just to replace that income because my focus was financial freedom and my expenses were low. And I thought if I could replace his income, I'm technically financially free. And so that first seller finance deal I did, it was 2 duplexes side by side. So 4 units. It cash flowed almost to the dollar that I was making at that job. But I had looked for a year. Wow. I had hundreds of conversations, made hundreds of offers. And then I found a deal that actually penciled, actually worked, and it could replace my income. Now, I think a lot of people would say, well, I'll keep working. I'll keep this property. My income's double. But I was really focused on building wealth versus making money. And so at 27, I became financially free. And I really never worked again, but I was still poor as shit, right? So I finished out that year at my job, and I'm like, I'm retired, I'm done, I did it. I replaced my income with rental property, but then I'm like, all right, I got a kid at home and another one on the way, and I'm really not making a ton of money. But I made the decision that I wouldn't go back to work or get another job. My focus would be buying more cash flow real estate. And so that's really the journey from 2009 through 13 when I started buying all these, smaller multifamily properties. During that 09 or 08 through 09, having all those conversations, I found that sellers, kind of going back to your question, why would a seller carry financing at no money down? With those conversations, I found that sellers were usually stuck on price, down payment, interest rate, or some other emotional aspect of the deal. Well, I had no money, so I had to find sellers that didn't care as much about a down payment, but had some other aspect, some other reason they wanted to sell the property. So the majority of these sellers were men and women in their 60s, 70s, sometimes even early 80s, who had owned the asset for a long time, but they were really running that mom and pop. They were self-managing. They were tired, really, really good people, somewhat savvy investors that, they knew enough to buy and hold real estate, but were just burnt out. They were self-managing. They were dealing with tenants, dealing with maintenance, dealing with repairs. Right. And it created an opportunity to, give them a scenario where it was a higher level of passivity for them. They got to be the bank. In most cases, they own these properties free and clear. They got to be the bank and they got to get mailbox money. And I got to actualize all the upside of a poorly managed, under rented property.
So for sure, there's always been seller finance deals, but I think that you see some ebbs and flows depending on where you're at in the market cycle. And so when financing, interest rates were low, money was abundant because they were printing, and just a few years ago, even if a seller finance deal was available, you probably didn't want to do that because you could go out and get terms at a bank and finance it that way. But now, I mean, this is what I'm seeing: seller financing is back on the table, because sellers maybe are still stuck in that 2021 pricing. And the only way they're going to get it is if they roll out the red carpet and hold the note on it. And so, I think there's always a scenario where there's a seller finance scenario to be had and motivation there. Okay, so you co-authored a book, 0 to 100. And tell us a little bit about that and kind of how that ties into your real estate journey and the premise of that.
Yeah. So 0 to 100, kind of my story. I mean, I now have about 450 residential units. I don't focus on residential much at all now. I've really kind of shifted towards larger commercial triple net type deals. But on my journey, it was about buying and holding cash flow real estate. All those early seller finance deals, my only criteria, I mean, these were 100% financed. And a lot of these have doubled and tripled in price since I've owned them. The cash flow's gone up. But my only criteria was they had to be cash flow positive. Mm-hmm. So, during that time, as people were like, well, we don't know what the market's going to do. We don't know what prices are going to do. I was like, I literally don't care what the price says on paper, as long as it's cash flow positive. So a big part of my journey was buying and holding cash flow real estate. I wasn't flipping. I wasn't wholesaling. I wasn't trying to make money. I was trying to build wealth through buying and holding cash flow real estate. On that journey, my focus was more than just financial freedom. It was time freedom. So when I was younger and getting started, I really felt the strong desire to be wealthy. And, some of it was just self-reflection of like, why is it that I have this? It feels like a very natural desire to be wealthy. And, I remember being on a walk and I was thinking like, why do I want to be wealthy? And what it came down to more so than financial freedom was time freedom. I wanted to be able to do whatever I wanted to do. I wanted to own my time. I wanted to own my day, my week, my year, and ultimately my life. I didn't want to show up and have a boss. I didn't want to show up and have someone tell me what to do. And I didn't want to build a business that took me away from all the other things that are important to me in my life, like my family and my health and being able to travel and do cool things. And so, kind of on my own journey of financial freedom and realizing that it really came down to just freedom and time freedom, I started getting around a lot of other investors, and I would ask them, and it was always financial freedom. And you dig one layer deeper, and it was almost always about time freedom. You have the rare individuals, maybe the Gary V's of the world that just they love 100-hour week and working their ass off is their happy place. But most people, they say they want to be financially free so they can spend more time with family or to travel or give back to some cause greater than themselves, whatever it might be. It almost always came back to time freedom. And I thought that was, very interesting. Kind of fast forward all these years later, I meet Travis and Mitch through GoBundance. It's a mastermind that we're both in. And they had been investing in real estate as well, but they kind of asked themselves these questions of why is it that some people spend a lifetime acquiring only a couple properties and other people in a short period of time acquire enough properties, hundreds of units, thousands of units, whatever it might be, to be financially free.
Which is a great question, right? Because we all know somebody who's been a real estate investor for 20 years.
And they have 10 houses or 15 houses.
Right.
And you're like, wow, you did a good job. But then there's maybe someone like yourself, and over the course of this 5 years, you accumulated how many properties, you think, between 2008 to 2013?
Gosh, 2008 through 13, I don't know. There was like probably 30, 40 units then. I don't know. My portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, that's just accelerated growth. So
what was, as you guys kind of like started to kick that question around, what was the answer you came up with?
Well, it was interesting because they had started, 0 to 100 kind of before I jumped in. And by then, like, there's a lot that I say no to because, I'm very clear on what's important to me, but I really loved what they were doing because it was education and a framework around buying and holding cash flow real estate to achieve time freedom. And so it really aligned with everything that I've built my life and my business around. And so, and not only are, Travis and Mitch, great businessmen, they're great humans. And, we really are building this because we feel like there's a need. And I watch a lot of people in the real estate world, they get into real estate because they say they want financial freedom, right? Or they say they want that time freedom, but then they build all these aspects of their business, whether it be a property management company, a brokerage, they're wholesaling, they're doing all these things. And now they're working 2-3 times as much as they did in their W-2. And it's actually taken them farther away from the whole reason they said they got into real estate in the first place. And so, the framework of 0 to 100 is really about achieving what we call R1. It's that first level of retirement. For me, it's that time when I bought those 2 duplexes and I was financially free. I wasn't rich. I wasn't wealthy yet, but I was financially free because I was able to replace my income with rental property. And I think a lot of people, even in the real estate world, create businesses thinking they're going to get financial freedom and time freedom, and they don't actually get that. So
yeah, it's interesting. I think you don't ask, it's kind of like, we need to build this ladder so we can climb it. And you don't ask the question like, well,
where are you going?
Which building are we going to lean it against? Are we going to get to the top of the right building? And you're just so fixated on, I got to build the business. I got to feed the beast. I got to start the engine. And so let me ask you this question though, because, R1, financial freedom, you started with 2 duplexes. Would you say that everybody starts there with just buying assets that are going to give them time freedom from the beginning? Or is there a time where you pay your dues and lay a foundation?
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, but I think the clearer somebody is on what they want out of life, the easier it is to build it. I mean, I have a lot of high salary earners reach out because they want to replace their income, but they've already had that lifestyle creep, right? They've spent the last 20 years, maybe there's college debt, or they're making a lot of money, but they have a lot of bills. So I think for young investors, those that are just getting in, while your expenses are low, replace that right away. Because once that's replaced, whether it's through house hacking, right? Go buy a 4-unit, live in the smallest unit, rent the other ones out. Like, the sooner somebody young can replace that income, they have their time, and then they can go spend time putting deals together. Obviously, life gets more expensive as you get married, you have kids, and you want to do those things. But I've also watched people with high salaries replace their income. Now, typically they're taking down much larger deals,
right.
And that's also kind of part of the 0 to 100 framework is like, why don't spend the time on these smaller deals that aren't going to be very financially impactful. In a lot of ways, it's easier to buy bigger deals because the value of those properties are based on NOI, not based on comps or what someone emotionally is willing to, pay for a house. And so I think with scale, you get comfortable taking down larger deals because it makes financial sense versus an emotional, the emotional aspect of like, I'm falling in love with this house and need to buy it. It's really hard to scale, I think, with single family or even small multifamily.
So like looking back, I was thinking about, I was driving the other day and I was like, man, I've seen my confidence level grow as I've taken down the next bigger deal, a different asset class, a little more sophistication, a deal that requires more sophistication. And so then that carries forward. And so I was asking myself, I was like, man, am I going to look back and regret that I didn't do it faster? Or am I just going to recognize that it's just an organic part of growth? Like, what would you say to that? Do you have regrets you didn't do it faster, or you just didn't know what you didn't know and you had to go through those milestones?
I mean, in general, I don't have any regrets in life because I think we're all where we're at because of the decisions we've made, good or bad. I thought about that question a lot, right? Because you said it very similarly to the way I would say it. Like, that first single family home I bought gave me the confidence and experience to do the next one. The first seller finance deal gave me the confidence and experience to do the next one and the next one. The first time I ever bought a mobile home park, same thing. First time I ever bought something out of state or a big commercial property, it gave me the confidence and experience. So I'm kind of conflicted on the answer because I'm not sure. That was my path. I've also watched people take down 300 unit apartment complexes for their first deal.
I know.
So I don't know if there's a right or wrong. I do know in my journey is very much like what you're saying is each deal has given me not just the confidence, but also the experience to go, you know what, that actually wasn't that bad. Yeah. I'm going to go take down another deal. So
yeah, I think the other element to that too is recognizing that you're going to have a growth journey, but then once you throw someone else in to that equation into your life, your circle, that's a way you can expedite things, because now you're leveraging their comfort level and their experience in an area that maybe you haven't gone yet, and it compounds and you start. I mean, that's what I've realized. Like, I am kind of the sum of the people I'm around, and I am so much further from other people that I have partnered with than if I were just doing this on my own and I'm just watching YouTube videos and just picking up the phone, calling people. Like, I've just learned a lot from other people and their experiences in investing. So what are some guiding principles that help filter investment decisions, and if they'll help you achieve time freedom, right? So time freedom's the goal. You're clear about that. You know what that is for you. What are some guiding principles that you use to filter opportunities that come your way?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, especially early on, and even today, like, I don't speculate on properties. I'm not basing my decision on future potential, upside potential, appreciation. I'm basing on the fundamentals of real estate. Like, this property needs to pencil today. So, I bought properties, like I said, with seller financing, with hard money, with private money. I want the property to work today, because all the shits that can happen in real estate, like things are going to happen. And I had an interesting experience in 2012 where I went on to a real estate event. It was the first paid event I ever went to, and Robert Kiyosaki was there, and a bunch of his advisors and a bunch of other investors. And what was interesting is, 2012, there was a lot of investors that just got through 2008.
Right.
Yeah.
And all the investors who had lost everything or lost a lot, they were basing everything on speculation. It was the property had to go up in value. Their only exit was the property had to go up in value for it to work.
That's where we are now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a lot of young syndicators that are getting hurt. I mean, I know a lot of investors that have raised capital because over the last several years, it's been really easy to raise money and really easy to put money into a deal. And so all those that did fine through '08 were just buying and holding cash flow real estate. And it just cemented what I'd already started doing, was buying and holding cash flow real estate and not worrying so much about what the value is on paper. Unless you're in a position where you have to sell or have to refinance, I was basing things on the fundamentals. Now you buy a property that cash flows with hard money or private money, that thing cash flows a lot better when you go and refi down the road with long-term traditional financing. That being said, most things that I buy, they do have upside potential. They are poorly managed or under rented, and there is a lot of value add in that aspect.
Right.
But it's not. I'm not basing on that. The property doesn't only work if I do these things, or if everything works out. If I can get rent up on every unit, and I get a perfect refinance and rates stay low forever. Right. And I get a great appraisal. Like, I'm not basing it on those things. I try to make my worst case scenario be what it is the day that I buy it.
And one thing that's, I think, sobering and a little humbling is usually people aren't relying on all of those variables to work in their favor. They may just be relying on one variable, but one variable can have a massive impact on a deal. Right? If you have debt that balloons in 3 years, but your rates are good for those 3 years, that balloon could be the thing that could sink you, or it could be fine, So it's like knowing where could you get screwed, where could things go wrong, and trying to eliminate and mitigate that risk as much as possible. I think people get confused. Young investors get into real estate and they hear the 10X message. They hear, they see around them on YouTube, they're kind of little pop stars in the real estate world, how aggressive those guys are. And they think that is the path forward. And it's really a partial story. It's a partial piece of the puzzle. And if that's all that you're acting on, I just think people are going to get burned. Okay, you said don't buy on speculation. That's kind of number one in how you filter things. But, part of that you said is time freedom. So is there certain asset classes you would or wouldn't buy based on the claim they might have on your time?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't manage any of my properties. I turned everything over to property management a long time ago. I had 17 units. I'm like still managing, and I remember it was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm trying to fix this toilet. It's in like 100-something-year-old home, and like my knuckles are bleeding because there's no room. And kids at home. I'm like, what am I doing? I had to call a plumber anyway, right? Because I wasn't even that handy, and I was for property management. And, that was the day that I decided I'm turning everything over to property management. And what I like building relationships, and I like putting deals together. That's what I'm good at. And it's what I like doing. I don't like property management, and I'm not good at it. And so I've always hired, and because from the time freedom standpoint, I chose not to start a property management company. I didn't want to manage people. I didn't want to manage my own property, let alone anyone else's. And so all my properties are managed by third-party property management. There's a lot of bad property management out there, but you find good property managers and you thank them often. And that's a huge part of my team is just, it's all third-party property management. I don't have employees. I don't have on-sites. I don't have, it's not taking up a lot of my time. I hire them and pay them to do what they're good at and what they're better at than I am.
So describe okay, you've got third-party property management for your different assets that are located, wherever the markets that you're buying. What's like a week look like in your life now?
Yeah, it really varies. I mean, I like to work out in the middle of the day. I like to be here so I can take my kids to and from school and to their different activities. Like, it's really important to me to be available. And so, when I'm not in town, we've traveled to some amazing places and rented out some crazy private islands and traveled all over the world, both, some travel with the family and just with my wife, and also a lot with some other real estate investors and stuff too. As you mentioned, it's important to be around people. So, my day to day, it varies week to week, but ultimately it comes down to I got to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Do you still spend a lot of time deal finding?
I've built a lot of good relationships, so I have a lot of deal flow. So a lot of properties come my way. There's periods of time where I'm focused on buying as many properties as I can, and other times, like right now, I actually want to buy less deals, but bigger, more financially impactful deals. So I'm looking, I'm very specific to the types of property that I'm looking at, and I've turned the funnel off to everything else. In 2019, I started buying mobile home parks, and I just stopped looking at anything outside of that for several years. I've kind of shifted from the mobile home park space more into the triple net commercial properties. But I remember the week that I decided I was going to just focus on mobile home parks, and I still own 9 parks today. That week that I decided that all these single family and small multifamily opportunities came in my email, and I'm just like, delete, because I had to have that focus of I could get caught up looking at all these deals, and it'll take me away from bigger deals. So
I feel like that is such a huge principle to success.
That's hard to do.
Is focus, and focus being not what am I focusing on, it's what am I not focusing on.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's half, maybe even more than half the battle, because there's always stuff vying for your attention. Hey, Gabriel, look at this deal. Hey, I've got this opportunity. Because you are so well networked, people don't know what your goals are, or they're just thinking, hey, this is what I've got going on. They're going to put it in front of you. You got to stay laser focused. That's a hard skill.
Do you still own that first single family house that you bought way back when?
The first single family home? No, I sold that only a couple years ago.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. We're going to jump into our smaller pocket segment here. So, Gabriel, what is one of your worst deals, your worst real estate deals? It could have been single family or a bigger deal. What went wrong? And then what did you learn from it?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm in the middle of a deal right now that I took over I've been very fortunate to have great partners. I am in a deal right now. I mean, this is probably the one that's most relevant is, I haven't had a lot of partnerships, but when I have partnered, they've been good partners. I've trusted my intuition. I've looked at the numbers, but about a year and a half ago, I went in on a deal. I was a minority owner on an apartment complex in an area that I don't know so well. And the partnership didn't end up turning out what it needed to be. So this particular property has cost me a lot more money. I was fortunate enough to be able to jump in and take over the ownership of this property. But long story short, vetting your partners, vetting their skill set, vetting their past deals, and I ended up in a situation where, I've done this long enough I'd like to say know better, but I took a chance. I took a chance on someone. I didn't do my due diligence as much as I should have. And, at the end of it, real estate, tends to heal all wounds, and this property is going to be worth a lot more than what I owe on it, and I'm going to end up in a good position. But yeah, I was not trying to be dealing with a 48 unit rehab project in another state.
So I mean, how long did that? So obviously you must have bought out your other partners. Is that kind of what happened to take over the partnership, or you just took over the project?
Yeah, he relinquished his ownership along with some of the other members. Yeah.
Was it a joint venture structure or like a syndication?
So it was a JV deal. It was kind of an interesting structure. The structure of it isn't necessarily a bad structure. It was supposed to be, the property was supposed to be renovated and then refi out in a long-term debt, and we'd get our initial money back. Mm-hmm. It's not what happened. A lot of the work didn't get done. And there wasn't enough funds to complete the extent of the project. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of due diligence done. And so by the time I stepped in to try to save this thing, it needed a lot more work, a lot more money than what the previous partner thought.
Yeah. How long did it take for you, from the time that you bought it to the time that you realized this isn't what you thought it was? How long was that period?
Too long. Too long. Like about a year, because I was such a minority owner that I didn't put in the time and energy. Like, I didn't go out to the property. I put a lot of trust in this other partner, that the work was being done and that the property was on course, which it wasn't.
Yeah, man, that's stressful.
What advice would you give to somebody who maybe is partnered in a deal, and similar? It's not going, like, maybe they're not the one spearheading it, but they're along for the ride.
Yeah, it's tough, because I think it's for the most part, I've been very fortunate with just trusting my instinct. And you got to look at the deal, you got to look at the numbers. I mean, I think the big learning lesson is, even though I wasn't a majority owner, I mean, I am now. Right. But even though I wasn't a majority owner, like, do your own due diligence, because if you're in the deal, you still need to know all the aspects of the deal and what you're getting into.
Doesn't matter if you're a 5% owner or a 50% owner, you got to take ownership of it. Yeah, that's good. All right, we're going to go into what we call our little nugget. So, Gabe, this is part of our show where you give our listeners one practical takeaway or a principle that you operate your business or your life by, that they can kind of apply to their lives and businesses.
Yeah, I think, I kind of said it before, but just get clarity on what you really, really want in your life and build your life and business around those things. Like, for me, there's a handful of things that are really important to me. And the clearer I am on what's important to me, which I'm really clear on what's important to me, it's really easy to say, yes, this aligns, or no, this doesn't align. So I say yes to the things that align with those couple things that are important to me, and I say no to the things that don't align with what's important to me. And that's in business or in life.
Yeah, I have no comment. That's really good. All right. What's been one of the best resources in your business development?
Gosh, getting around other people. I mean, I'm in multiple different masterminds and communities, and it's interesting because you get around other high level players, and I purposely put myself in rooms with people that are playing life big. Not just financially, but that are living life to the fullest. And, sometimes it's someone says something and you're like, oh, I need to go implement that in my business, or it's very practical. I need to go implement that in my business, implement that in my life. But other times it's just the energy of being around people that are playing at a high level that forces you to think bigger and to play bigger. And so I think one of the biggest hacks that there is getting around people that are doing what it is that you want to do. Sometimes it might be someone that's one step ahead, 10 steps ahead. It doesn't matter. Get in those rooms, get around those people that inspire you and push you to be the best version of yourself.
It's funny. I'm a part of a leadership group kind of in our area. And today we toured the juvenile detention center, just kind of understand the background, like what's going on in our community, who are the community members and the pillars to the places we live in every day. And they had two young guys come out and share kind of on a panel, like their experience in the JV system. And it hit me, right? Like, they are in many ways the byproduct of their environment. in a negative sense, right? These guys are
100%. Yeah.
they'll get out, they'll repeat, so they get back in again because they do well, and then they get back into the same environment, and then here they are again, back in JV. And the flip side of that, though, is on the success, spectrum. Who you surround yourself, the environment you put yourself in, can have a positive impact. And so it's very basic. We see it like fundamentally across the board, both negative and positive. And it's something that like I've been reluctant to believe, like, or I just get so busy. I'm like, well, how much can that really benefit me? But relationships are long-term, right? And they compound. So, I mean, I love that advice.
Yeah.
That's
what
powerful.
would be your advice for the average investor starting out, or, they've been doing it for a few years. They've outgrown maybe their existing network, and they're trying to break into those circles that are maybe the next level investors. But where do they go to find those groups, or what was beneficial for you when you were starting out, and how did you break into those groups?
Yeah, I wasn't part of any groups early on, right? There was a piece, and I didn't realize how important that was. It wasn't until 2018 I joined a group called GoBundance, and I don't know if you're familiar with GoBundance, but there's a net worth requirement. But what's interesting with GoBundance, it's the easiest way to explain it, it's a group of high net worth individuals that care about more than just money. So here I am with guys that have achieved a certain amount of success, but they're also focused on like, how do I become the best husband, the best parent? How do I, go experience life, bucket list adventures, and my health, and all these different things. And so, it was an environment where, hey, here's a lot of successful guys that are able to share their wins, but they're also able to share their challenges, because the reality is it's kind of a solo journey until you get around other investors. And the reality is, I hate to say it, but as you grow financially, you are going to outgrow some different people in your life. Your challenges are going to be, very different. You're trying to refinance a $5 million property. The reality is it is going to be hard to relate to someone that's, struggling to make ends meet. And it's not that your problems are any more important than their problems. It's just your local circle kind of shrinks. And so I've been very fortunate to be part of a lot of different groups. Now we have the 0 to 100 group, which is great. It's a community for people to be involved with other investors. And there's a clear path to financial freedom. And so I see that with a lot of people. They kind of are in this solo journey in their community or in their area. And it doesn't matter whether it's, our tribe 0 to 100 or bigger pockets or going to some different events, but you got to get around people that are doing it, because most people have already had the problem that you're trying to solve, or they're already playing the game that you're trying to get into. And so when you get around those people, you realize like there's actually a way to do it. And it's
right.
That's awesome, man. So this would be a great segue. How can people find out more about you and follow your success?
Yeah, the easiest way to follow me is on Instagram. It's just the real Gabriel Hamel. I'm fairly active on Instagram, and then also at the 0 to 100 tribe. You can go to 0 to 100tribe.com, and then we also have a private Facebook group as well for 0 to 100.
Did someone steal your Instagram? Is that why you're the real Gabriel Hamel? I mean, did they take Gabriel Hamel?
You got to get that blue check mark, because yeah.
Isn't there I think there's a U.S. male gymnast named Gabriel Hamel.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Or maybe, what? Don't fact check.
Don't
look that up. Yeah.
I don't know.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. I think what I like about your story is it didn't happen overnight. There were fundamentals to it. And in many ways, it's relatable because, you got into the game and it was real estate investing that drew you in. And then at some point you transitioned and you said, you know what? I don't just want money. I want my time back. And it's cool to see you at this point now, but it didn't happen overnight. And we'll put those links in the show notes so people can check that out. 0 to 100 Tribe. Dude, thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. As always, excited that you joined us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to learn how you can use your hard-earned capital to diversify into real estate, go to our website, lv5capital.com, and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. We'll see you next time.